Imagine being 12 years old, living in a beautiful house, surrounded by everything you need, but feeling completely invisible. Ayo was always alone at home. His parents, Akin and Bimbo, worked tirelessly to provide for him, but their jobs left little room for them to be present in his life. They thought they were doing what was best, but their absence only hurt Ayo more than they could ever realize. Every day after school, Ayo would come home to an empty house. His parents were always either at work or in meetings. Ayo longed for attention, for someone to ask him about his day, or even listen to his thoughts. But no one was there. He tried reaching out, but whenever he spoke, his words were ignored. Ayo, go play outside for now. We are busy, his father would say, with his eyes glued to his laptop. Bimbo would smile, patting him on his head and say, we are doing this for you, Ayo. We will talk later. But later never came for Ayo. One evening, as Ayo sat quietly at the dining table, pushing his food around with his spoon, he quickly sighed. I hate staying alone, Mom. He muttered. We are sorry, my dear. Bimbo said, it's just for a few hours every day. We have to work hard to make sure you get the best education. One morning, as Bimbo and Ayo prepared for another busy day, she turned to her husband with an idea. Akin, she began, why don't we ask Nika to look after Ayo for a few hours after school? She's our neighbor, and she's always fond of Ayo, and she seems to look like a responsible young lady. I don't know, Bimbo. She's just a neighbor. Can we trust her with our son? Oh, come on. Nika has always been kind to us. She even helps us carry our heavy bags when we return from the market. Besides, Ayo likes her, Bimbo said in a reassuring tone. Ayo enjoyed spending time with Nika. She was warm and caring. She showered him with the affection he so desperately needed. Auntie Nika would always call him the little brother she never had. She bought him new toys and even took him out for treats. Her attention felt like a balm for Ayo's lonely heart. But it didn't take long for Ayo to realize that something wasn't quite right. One day, Nika introduced Ayo to a special game she had just created for the two of them. It's a secret, Ayo, just for us, she whispered, her voice soft and inviting. Ayo didn't know what to think, but he trusted her. They played for a while, and Nika gave him attention like she always did. But then, the game became very uncomfortable for Ayo. Nika began guiding Ayo's hand, telling him to touch sensitive parts of her body. Ayo pulled away, his heart racing, unsure of what was happening. Don't worry, Ayo, Nika reassured him. You will get used to it. It's normal. Even mommy and daddy do it. Ayo's confusion turned into fear. This wasn't normal. But every time he tried to speak up, Nika would smile and say, it's just a game, Ayo. It's our secret. Don't tell anyone, or they will think you are strange. Because Ayo was too scared to speak out, he continued with the game. He didn't understand why it felt wrong, but the fear of not being believed by anyone kept him quiet. As the days passed, Ayo's fear grew. He started feeling sick when he had to go to Nika's house. He wasn't eating much, and his school grades dropped, and his bedwetting habits returned, something he hadn't done in years. Ayo had stopped bedwetting since he was 7. He tried to ignore it, but the shame weighed on him. Auntie Nika did not just make Ayo touch sensitive parts of her body. She also forced him to suck in between her legs. One evening, after another encounter with Nika, Ayo walked up to his mom, who was sitting on the couch, exhausted from work. Mom, he started, his voice shaking. I need to talk to you about Auntie Nika. But before Ayo could finish, Bimbo looked up briefly, her eyes filled with impatience. Ayo, not now. I'm very tired. We can talk later, Bimbo said as she quickly turned back to the TV. Ayo hesitated. Mom, she's making me do things I don't like. His voice cracked, but his mother didn't hear the desperation in it. Ayo, stop. We don't have time for this now, she snapped. Go do your homework. We'll talk later, okay? Ayo stood there for a moment, his words hanging in the air. but there was no one to hear them. He quietly walked away with a heavy heart, knowing that once again, he was invisible to his parents. Days passed, and Ayo's world became more difficult to navigate. The shame, the fear, the confusion, they all became too much for him to carry alone. Every time he walked into Yinka's house, he felt a knot on his stomach, but he didn't know how to escape, especially when his parents wouldn't listen to him. One day, after another painful game with Yinka, Ayo found his father sitting in the living room. Akin was busy reviewing work documents. He barely noticed his son standing there. Ayo cleared his throat. "Dad, can we talk?" Ayo interrupted, but Akin barely looked up from his laptop. "What is it, Ayo? Daddy is busy now. If it's about the PS5 I promised you, don't worry. I will get it for you by weekend." "No, Dad. It's about Auntie Yinka. She's... But Akin only glanced at him briefly, irritated. "I said not now, Ayo. I'm trying to finish something," his father said with a sigh. "Go play outside or do something. We'll talk later." But Ayo knew his parents later never came. The rejection stung more than anything. How could his father not see the fear in his eyes? How could he be so consumed with work that he missed the pain his son was going through? Ayo was crying for help, but Ayo's cries for help didn't go completely unnoticed. His teacher, Mrs. Annie, had been watching him closely for weeks. She had seen the changes in him. The once lively, talkative Ayo was now withdrawn and sad. His usual happy and hyper mood was replaced by dread, and she knew something wasn't right. One day after school, Mrs. Annie gently called Ayo over. "Ayo, I've noticed something isn't right with you. You're not yourself lately. Are you okay?" For the first time in what feels like forever, Ayo felt a flicker of hope. Mrs. Annie's kindness gave him the courage to speak. "It's Auntie Yinka," Ayo whispered in a barely audible voice. She makes me do things. She touches me and makes me touch her too, and it feels wrong." Mrs. Annie's face drained of color. She immediately knelt down beside Ayo. "Tell me what kind of things she makes you do." Ayo explained everything to Auntie Annie. "Ayo, you did the right thing by telling me. I believe you, and I will make sure you are safe. You don't have to be afraid anymore." In that moment, Ayo felt a weight lift off his shoulder. Finally, someone was listening. The truth had been exposed, and Ayo's parents were summoned to the school. When they learned what had been happening, the guilt washed over them. They had failed their son, and they had been too absorbed in their work to notice the signs, to listen to Ayo when he tried to speak up. Akin and Bimbo quickly reported to the police station. The police took immediate action and went to arrest Yinka, but when they arrived at her house, Yinka was gone. She had disappeared, knowing that the truth was about to catch up to her. Ayo's parents were devastated. They had been so busy with their careers that they hadn't realized what was happening under their own roof. The authorities issued a warrant for Yinka's arrest. They even offered a reward for anyone with any information that could lead to her capture. But the real damage had been done. Ayo's parents rushed home that day, and that evening, they sat down with their son. They apologized for not noticing the signs sooner. "I'm sorry, Ayo," Bimbo cried. "We should have been there for you." They promised their son that they would make sure he was safe. Though Yinka was gone, but the damage she had caused lingered like a shadow over Ayo's young mind. At night, he still woke up sweating, his heart pounding from nightmares he couldn't escape. The feeling of fear, shame, and confusion did not vanish overnight. But there was one thing different now. He was no longer alone. Akin and Bibo made sure of that. Every day after work, instead of collapsing into bed from exhaustion, they sat with him. They listened. They assured him that none of this was his fault, and they reminded him over and over again that he was loved, safe, and that he had done nothing wrong. As the weeks went by, Ayo slowly began to heal. His parents became more involved in his life, and with the help of therapy, Ayo began to open up about his experiences. Though the trauma would take time to heal, Ayo knew that he would never have to face it alone again. Yinka's whereabouts remained unknown, and the hunt for her continued, with Akin and Bimbo hoping to see justice served for the pain she had caused Ayo. Please, parents, always listen to your children. Their silence often speaks louder than words. Never assume they are okay. Ask questions, listen, and make sure they can trust you. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And let me know what you think of this story in the comment section. Please do well to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button for more amazing stories. Until I bring another amazing story your way. Bye!